everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. The elections are over and the results are in. Now, for the people in our panel discussion today, that's a big statement for them to make because it means they can sigh a sigh of relief because the process is concluded. Today we have with us for our conversation about mail-in ballots and the new process for voting that has swept across the state, county clerks from across the state. I'll introduce them now. Joanne Evans, the clerk auditor from Duchesne County. Thank you for driving in today.
Thanks for having me.
We have Ricky Hatch, who is kind of like a regular on the show, from Weber County, and we have Sherry Swenson, who is the Salt Lake County clerk. It's nice to have a nice spread of different counties from across the state. For a lot of us, vote by mail just seems like a new thing, because if we missed an election, we missed a city election or one of the first ones, it's still kind of a new process. So I wanted to start the conversation with a little bit of the history. And Joanne, that's why you got invited to the table today, because Duchesne County was the first county to go all mail. And that's not M-A-L-E, that's M-A-I-L. Tell me a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the implementation and the history. Why'd you guys decide to do this?
We did it for a couple different reasons. We needed to reduce some costs because our budget was getting tight, the economy was going low, type of thing. But mostly it was because we were chopped into 3 different House districts and we wanted to have representation for Duchesne County. And after a lot of research and thinking things through and talking with the commissioners, we decided that the best way to do that was to go by mail and trying to increase our numbers. And it worked for us up to a point.
Why would a mail-in ballot be any different than a machine ballot, other than the fact that voting machines are kind of expensive?
Well, our voting machines, the total turnout when we were running those, we were only getting in the upper 40s, maybe low 50% turnout. When we went by mail the very first year, we were 80%. And in this last presidential race that we had last year, we got almost 90%. So it increases for us a whole tremendous amount.
Let me kind of turn that perspective, because they're the ones that started in the state. For the two of you, did you think they were nuts when they decided to try and go by mail, or had you guys been contemplating it?
Not at all. In fact, as soon as the law would allow us to conduct regular elections by mail in 2013, we were contracting to do the municipal elections, and we offered the cities the opportunity to conduct their elections by mail. And the first 2 cities that came on board was Cottonwood Heights and West Jordan, and they were so successful. The turnout in those city elections was 2.5, 3 times what they'd seen in the past in a comparable election when people had to go to polling places. Mm-hmm. So we knew that it was a success.
What were your reactions up north?
Well, we already knew Joanne was nuts because she's an elections official, and we're all crazy. Let's just put that out there. Right? We were impressed by her because it's scary to take a new step. We had been hearing the advantages of vote by mail up in Oregon and Washington for quite some time, and we could see from an elections administration standpoint a lot of the benefit, but it's scary to take the leap. And so when Joanne did, it was kind of hold your breath and we hope it works out. And as it started coming in and we started seeing that it was working for her county, we talked more about the benefits and we thought, I don't see a lot of downside here. This seems like it's a good thing on the elections administration side, but also for the voters as well.
Change is very hard, particularly for governments, because they get traditions and you get new people elected, and it's just kind of the tradition. Just very briefly, was there opposition in your counties internally about saying, oh, let's not go down this road?
There wasn't in our county because we had already had those discussions about what would be best for us to get people in. So there wasn't any controversy in our county officials at all.
For our county, it was actually a fortuitous time. We had a special election that dealt with property taxes, but it was held in June, which is normally a lower turnout period. And we proposed this to the commission, and they said this is the only way we would do this because we know it'll get higher turnout, but we need the decision. We don't want to wait till November. So it was a perfect time for them to do it. So actually, we didn't get any pushback either.
What about you? You have more guys to deal with than anybody
Right.
else.
And when we first offered it to the cities that didn't come on board in 2013 wanted to see how it worked for the other cities, or the two that did, and then they were convinced that it was successful. So they came on board, but for the county council, they were very receptive. There was a little concern. We had to explain the turnout would be better, the cost would be less, and then they were very supportive.
And that's an excellent place to take a break. We're going to take a break from the county seat. We're going to come back. We'll pick up the conversation about talking about the cost savings and how a county realizes that by doing a vote by mail. We'll be right back with the county seat.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
It's one more, here we go again. I tell myself I'm not enough, but one more time is not enough. One last kiss and then you were gone, and I'm here wishing you could stay a little longer. Stay a little longer. Wishing you could stay a little longer.
Too often we find ourselves in shoes like these, or these. Wouldn't it be nice to change into something more like this, or this? How about these? Put on whatever shoes you prefer and come to Beaver County. We have exactly the adventure you need to put under them. So the next time you want to change out of these, come to Beaver County where you can jump into a pair of these. Beaver County, Utah. Lace up for adventure.
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about vote by mail. How many elections are we now into this? How about Salt Lake County?
Well, we did our first two municipal elections in the primary in 2013, and then we did it again in 2015, so there was 4, and then last year 6, 7 for Salt Lake County.
Yeah, how about you?
We were about the same. Our first election was in 2013, and we kept going.
You guys were.
Yeah, we've been going since the primary of 2010.
Okay, so now as I understand this, everybody has options. It's not like, well, you have to vote by mail, and if you don't have a mailbox, then you get cheated out of voting. And I guess that's the only way you'd get cheated out of voting, right? Is if you didn't have a mailbox?
Well, even then you'd still have options. But yeah, vote by mail it's a little bit of a misnomer. Not necessarily a misnomer, but it's misunderstood. For me, vote by mail simply means I mail the voter a ballot. If you're a voter, you're going to get a ballot in the mail about 3 to 4 weeks before the election. Now, you have several options on how you're going to cast that ballot. You can vote it, stamp it, put it in the mail. You can vote it and drop it in a drop box. You can wait until election day and drop it in the ballot box at the voting center. You can go in person if you have visual impairment or other needs or questions. You can go vote on a machine in person. And some counties have early voting, and you can go vote early. So there are all sorts of different options.
We're talking about cost savings, and everybody says this saves them money. But it looks like you've had to put more options on the table. If you can still go in and vote at a polling place, how are you saving money? Because you still have to have the polls open.
Well, I'd like to respond to that. So we used to have traditional polling places, and for instance, we had in the 2012 presidential election 312 polling locations. And so having to prepare all those electronic voting machines for all of those locations, have them deployed by drayage companies, having to hire poll workers for all those locations, that's how it saves money. The preparation time for getting all of that ready leading up to the election versus getting ballots prepared and mailing to people was so much more expensive. So we were able, with vote by mail, to consolidate locations into vote centers and early voting locations. And most people are returning their vote by mail ballot versus utilizing the early voting and vote centers.
So let me ask that question, just so people get a comparison, Sherry. You've gone from 300 plus polling locations. What did this last civic election look like, municipal election?
It was actually 36 vote centers.
That is a lot.
Yeah, and we had early voting in 12 locations. And so the majority of the people that cast their vote did use their vote by mail ballot.
Same in Weber.
And so Duchesne, being a very much more sparsely populated state, how did you do your early voting or your walk-in ballots?
We don't do early voting. We are completely by mail. We have drop boxes in different places. But mostly everybody can come to the clerk's office because we're the center of the county. And we can fulfill their needs there.
There isn't a voting machine in Duchesne County at all right now?
There is, but it's for disabled voters and stuff, but it can turn if we really need to accommodate a regular voter, but we prefer to stay out by mail.
Okay, that's great. You put us onto a very good topic, misnomers that people have, and we'll make that the point of our conversation when we come back on the County Seat.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We're talking with county clerks, clerk auditors from across the state about the vote by mail phenomenon that is now part of our new and adjusting culture here in Utah. We kind of ended on a point where you say you have drop boxes. Are there still a lot of people that are afraid of putting something in the mail because somebody's going to tamper with their ballot?
There are those people who do not want to do that, but they're a small minority. They're usually the older people, the older generation, who think that it's their civic duty to go to a polling place and stand in line and visit with their neighbors about the issues and stuff. And they have every right to be worried about that and stuff. And so we try to work through that as they call us and visit with us, and so that we can do some voter outreach and let them know that it's okay
So how secure is this process? I mean, I got my ballot, thank you, Sherry, in the mail. You delivered it perfectly. Had a little envelope in there, a little sleeve, so that everything was anonymous, and I put my stuff in there. And granted, just because I was such a laggard at voting, I had to actually drop it off on Election Day, but I had no fear about mailing it. How secure is this system?
It's very secure. The post office takes great care to separate our ballots out for us. We have a team that goes out to the post office every day, picks up the ballots if they are returned by mail. They're very secure, and we treat them so that the voter's privacy is protected. We have that sleeve included in our ballot, and we also have an OPEX machine that it's run through that, it's sliced open, the return envelope, the sleeve is removed, the identifying factor of that return envelope is dropped in a bin beneath, and the person operating that would never be able to tell which votes were attributed to that individual. But if someone wants to drop their ballot at a drop box, we have in Salt Lake County 18 of those. And again, like Ricky said, they could also go on Election Day and drop their ballot at a vote center. If they prefer that, they're very welcome to do that.
And voters are welcome to go to vote.utah.gov. They can check the status of their ballot online, so you can verify that your ballot's been returned. And if the day before Election Day you go there and it says that it hasn't been received, come on in and vote. We'll have you vote provisionally. If it eventually comes, whichever one comes to us first, that's the vote that we count, but never both, because we have controls to control that. We've led a lot of tours through our elections process, our by-mail balloting process, and I'm sure the other clerks can vouch for this as well. We've had a lot of skeptics come through. We've never had a skeptic leave. They always say, wow, we had no idea. This is so controlled. One guy just recently said, your process is you have tighter security than Boeing. And I know because I worked for him. And it was quite a compliment, but because he came in skeptical. But we have so many reconciliation points and so much control, always two people, and multiple reconciliation points throughout the process. It's very safe.
Do you think there is less chance of a mistake being made on somebody's ballot in a vote by mail than, say, with Diebold machines?
I don't think there's less. I mean, people make mistakes on their ballot. They cross things out, they change them. We do have to duplicate ballots. We use Teams. We log the original ballot so we can always refer back to it. But that's also allowed. If someone makes a mistake on a vote by mail ballot and they send it in and we can see that they've crossed something out, it may not run through our automated scanners, but we take all the care in the world to make sure that that ballot is duplicated, kept on file for reference. And the electronic machines, if you cast a vote on that machine, it's a vote cast and it's very secure. But both processes are very good.
So have you ever had like a machine start smoking and sparking on you or anything?
Oh, no.
I've had a server do that.
We did touch on one thing, and you kind of alluded to it, that people feel they have a civic right to vote. I've got a neighbor, and bless her heart, she's 80 years old, and she's very active, and she votes, and she votes, and she votes, and she knows who we are if we're talking about this right now. She didn't like the vote by mail because she feels that she needs to go down and talk to her neighbors and the people that volunteer and the poll watchers, and that it's not as effective. I don't think she's concerned about safety, but it's just she's not doing what she's supposed to do. How do you change that? How do you get people past that?
Well, I don't know that you can change their mindset overnight. I think it's a progressional thing that you have to do. But when you're voting by mail, quite often we get feedback about people sitting around their dining room table, talking about the issues and trying to decide what is best for our county or for our nation or our state, and I think that that's one way that she could view it as her civic duty would be to, instead of going to a polling place, to discuss it with people there, that she could do it with her family and friends at home and then drop her ballot off.
Yeah, we've heard of ballot marking parties. Folks get around and they bring their ballots, they talk about the issues, they got computers, they look things up and they discuss. Then when it comes time to vote, of course they can vote if people want to see, or they can vote privately. But it's kind of a fun new idea that you wouldn't have with a traditional polling place.
Well, and they have more time. They get their ballot 3 to 4 weeks before the election day, and they can look things up. They're not surprised by a proposition or a constitutional amendment, and they're not standing at a voting machine going, I don't know anything about this. They have time to research. I feel that it makes for a more informed voter.
I would have to agree. You know, when I get a ballot, I open it up in the mail. I look at it right away, and of course, most of the stuff I have traditionally tried to be aware of. But when I actually see the language of the proposition, I go, huh. And I have had a chance to kind of look it up. I can go to the legislative record. I can kind of see the progress of why it's there, so I suppose that does help. I would like to talk about statistics, because there were a lot of skeptics about whether this was going to work. Do all of you agree that it has significantly increased voter turnout?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
By what? By how big a margin? I mean, you've cut polling places from 300 to 36. How much have you increased your vote participation?
Well, last year we had waiting lines because people really, we found out that out of the 55,000 people that went to our vote centers last year in the general election, about 45,000 of those individuals actually had a vote by mail ballot. And the vote centers were meant really for people who needed that facility, but nevertheless, for whatever reason, some of them said they thought it was coupons, they thought it was junk mail. We learned some lessons in that, and we make sure now that if someone wants to vote in person, that we have enough of the vote centers to accommodate whichever type of election. But as far as turnout last year in Salt Lake County, we had a record number of registered voters, and we had an 84% turnout of a record number of registered voters. In the municipal elections, the turnout absolutely has been higher. We used to see in a primary like we just had, 10-12% turnout. We saw almost 27%. That's still not great with me, but it's much.
Embarrassing.
It is, but it's still much better than it would have been had it not been a vote by mail election.
True. Not embarrassing to you. You're doing your job. It's
The
embarrassing to us
people.
because we don't get out and do it.
We saw similar numbers in Weber County. It's hard to estimate what turnout would be if it weren't vote by mail, but in a primary or a special election that's normally a lower turnout, it's at least a 10 to 20% higher turnout when you have vote by mail versus traditional.
Do you think it'll improve with the future? Do you think more people will actually start doing this? I mean, I almost ran the risk of missing it this year because I had some thinking to do about it, and I realized I was thinking down to the 14th. I'm going, holy crap! But do you think that in general it's going to catch on? Do you think it will improve naturally and organically going forward?
I do, because I think people will be more informed about the process. One of the things we encounter, the state law requires the ballots, if they return them by mail, that they're postmarked the day before election day. And so sometimes people think, oh, not postmarked, I can't vote, and they don't. They don't realize the other options, but they'll get more informed. They don't realize about all of our drop boxes and our vote center drop-offs.
Well, that message did get out this year in Salt Lake County, because I actually brought mine in on election day and dropped it off. It was very easy to do. Just dropped it right there and said hi to everybody and left. So
we had two statistics that stuck out to me in this primary election that we just had. Of all the ballots cast at all of our vote centers and by mail, less than 2% of all ballots cast were cast in person on a machine. Now that was about 12 to 15% back in November. And so the voters seem to be appreciating it and welcoming it and trusting the process, because that number continues to drop. The second one is a survey that we did of Weber County voters. We did over 1,600 voters. This was done by Weber State University. And 87% of them said that they felt that voting by mail, they either were strongly supportive of it or supportive of it. And so they felt that they're starting to embrace it as they get more comfortable and realize the convenience and benefit. I think that number will just continue to rise.
Do you think the fear of it will subside? Because I mean, there are some people that are just really, really leery about turning it over. So anyway, I've gone way over on this segment. We'll be right back to finish up on the county seat.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
The Layton Hills Mall offers more than just shopping. Bring the whole family and enjoy SeaQuest Interactive Aquarium to feed the fish and exotic birds, hold live reptiles, and even swim with the stingrays. Or pump up the action and visit Dartside, Utah's premier soft foam dart tag arena. And don't forget the Great Room Escape, where you can challenge your friends to solving mysteries inside themed rooms. So come and experience great fun at the Layton Hills Mall and visit playindavis.com for other great activities.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've had so much fun talking. We've gone way over time. One last final thought. If people still have concern about vote by mail, what should they do?
They should come in and see us and watch the process so that they can see how secure it is and how important it is to us to keep it above board and to know that we have their best interests in heart.
So even a small county like Duchesne, you can come in and see the process?
You bet.
All right. Well, they've got a chance to do that in just a couple of months, don't they? Thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate your input on this really important subject. Looks like it's a thumbs up all the way across. Thank you for inviting us into your home each week on the county seat. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Be part of the solution. We'll see you next week on the county seat.